Let's hear it for Chip Beck.
It's a real privilege to be here because, first off, on the PGA Tour, our chaplain is a former Catholic. A lot of the players, former Catholics, have turned to the born-again faith. And because our chaplain is from Detroit, and he's converted a lot of guys. There's a big lure for the tour. And a lot of guys come out and they get baptized and they do a really good job. And so they have a real strong born-again faith on the tour, which is great. But I hate to see all my Catholic brethren being converted, it's like, we're Catholic, we're Christians too, But anyways, they become engrossed in the non-Catholic, so to speak, the religious. So this is actually the first group that I've spoken to that's predominantly Catholic. And it's really comfortable for me because it's so surprising to see people that actually practice their faith on tour. I see 3 or 4 guys, I might see their wives, but it's not really like it's a big number of people that actually practice, go to church and go to daily mass and what have you. So it's a privilege to be here. And I must say that if I take you back to my boyhood, I came from a family of 10 children. My mom and dad were educated all through the Catholic school. My dad got his dental degree from Loyola University in New Orleans. My mother they met there. And they always wanted 12 children. But they only had 10. They had a couple of miscarriages. But anyways, my parents were so devout in the respect that they were disciplined, they were kind, they were not pretentious, and they were the kind of people that taught us not to be jealous of others. When somebody in our family would have something good happen to them, don't be jealous, be happy for them and thankful for them. And so consequently, when my dad passed away so many years ago, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, he filled the church up. And I found that his charity was really in his work. I had 3 doctors come up to me and say, your dad got me in a building, didn't charge me rent for a year, or he set me up, charged me half what he should charge me. He really helped me get my feet on the ground. So it was really a nice feeling to see that your family, your father, would do so much work like that inside his practice. And so, my dad, you could count the times he used bad language, like damn or GD. I think maybe one time I heard him say it, it was like, wow. My dad just didn't have a filthy mouth. And his dad was a bricklayer from Brooklyn, New York, Hell's Kitchen, he called him. And he'd seen the ropes, he was the kind of guy that when he came home, he thought he was going to die in Saudi Arabia laying brick. And he said, if I get out of this, I promise you, Lord, I'll marry the first girl I married. So he ended up marrying my grandmother. And literally, they had 3 sons. They had one a lawyer, one my dad was a dentist, and one was an RN. So my dad, he was a good man in respect that he didn't have bad habits. And if he did, he disciplined himself to keep them from causing him trouble. And so, I think about it. I come from that kind of background. I'm not really prone to depression because we had a lot of love in our family, and we had a lot of goodness, And so we kind of knew we were going to all be successful. We were educated, college degrees, and even in North Carolina, that's pretty expensive for my dad to put us all through. I think he had 5 in college for 10 years straight. It's a lot of education bills to pay. And, it's like a revolving scale. But I know today that if Tiger Woods and Bill Clinton would have had a father like mine, they'd have been, Clinton would have been known as probably the greatest president of all time, been like some of the founding fathers who did such a good job in office, and then Tiger Woods would have never had all these troubles with the girls and stuff, because my dad, when I hit my sister, that was the last time I hit a girl. I didn't hit her. I was punished. I thought I'd never get through it. If I didn't go to church, I was punished. It was like, whoa. So we learned to do the right thing. And some people tell me it's like, Chip, you're too Catholic. you can't be successful. You're not selfish enough to be a great player. But we always knew that we were going to be successful in the right way. It was more important to do the right thing and to be successful in that manner than to, have everything go your way and be top of the world. So we never really, in my family, my dad was never jealous of people. He was always, like he'd introduce me to some of his friends, he'd say, yeah, Chip, this is my buddy. He's got the golden touch. Everything he touches turns to gold. And he was about 85 years old at the time, this old fella. But anyway, my dad was always proud of his friends that did well, and he was always kind and courteous. And so that's kind of where I came from. If I didn't greet the press and didn't talk to the press, my parents would have taken me out of the game. They weren't going to allow that. I remember my grandfather, one of the last times I really got angry, I was playing our last hole. I get down on the 18th hole, and I hit it in the trees, and I couldn't get out. And I was so mad because I loved my grandfather, and I wanted to think so much of him. And he said, Chip, at the end of the day, he said, Chip, if I ever see you act like that way again and throwing your club and getting angry, if I ever see you doing that again, I don't ever care. I ever see you play golf again. And I was kind of surprised. I thought, wow. But my grandfather wasn't going to tolerate it, So that's the background I came from. And then, as you go through life, you have experiences that, and in time, you actually could see where God's hand was in it. So like, for instance, when I was a little boy, 10 years old, I took up the game. And that summer, I played all summer. I won the Pee Wee Championship. And then that fall, Raymond Floyd's father had a 30% interest in this golf course, Cypress Lakes, named the road out here. And he brought Jack Nicklaus to do an exhibition. And I remember following them at that golf club. And I said, man, I remember the shots Nicklaus hit. He hit over the corner on this dog-leg par 4, and he hit a wedge about 40 yards short of the flag. And I thought, wow, I couldn't believe he hit it so fast. But that was kind of his game anyway. But the fascinating thing was, I went back there years later, and I remember the smell of that place. Like, oh man, that was the day I knew I wanted to be a professional golfer. So time goes on. I get through college, and I get to the point where I had a good sponsor. Then my sponsor dropped me, and L.B. Floyd called me up in about 1984 after I started in '79, so 4 or 5 years on the tour. And he said, Chip, you can come play at Cypress Lakes. I think I can help you, which was really nice because at that time you lose your sponsor. I'm in a tough marriage. Things aren't going that well, and I'm thinking unconditional love is going to heal all ills. And sometimes it doesn't do that for you, It takes a little common sense and good decision making. So anyways, I go and see LB, and he works with me a couple of years, and I finished 31st and 30th on the money list, which is really quite a feather in my cap. And one of the first times I played with Raymond Floyd, I was so nervous. And we were playing in the U.S. Open, and I hit it left, and about the third hole, I got standing behind this tree, and Grady comes up to me, puts his arm around me, and says, Chip, settle down. Follow me. I'm going to take you all the way to the top. He said, I'm going to win this golf tournament. You just follow my coattails. He won't be messing him up. My father was a sergeant, and he would tell me, he'd say, Chip, let me tell you something. I can take the horse to the trough, but I can't make him drink. And he'd say, my God, son, drink. He'd grab me by the shoulder. And I knew he wanted to cuss at me and yell at me because I had like 17 second place finishes. And it was killing me too, believe me. But I was in a marriage, it was like, the better I played, like if I won or whatever, it almost perpetuated a lifestyle my wife hated. So I was in a tough situation. So anyways, I got through all that. And in 1989, 88, I won the Barton Trophy. In 1989, the coach of the Ryder Cup, the captain of the Ryder Cup team was Raymond Floyd. And I thought, you know what? That's pretty cool. So I get there, and Raymond says, Chip, and he told Paul Zinger, and I said, Chip, Zinger, you guys have earned your way, you've earned your keep. We're putting you in, we're counting on you. Play well, we're depending on you. That was the best thing you could have said because we really played well that year. And, I had another experience where in 1986, right after working with Raymond's dad, I'd run like 2 weeks prior to the final weekend of the U.S. Open. And I got paired on Sunday with Seve Ballesteros. And we were in contention. And it was really fascinating. Going into the last hole, I was like a shot back. And Seve was at it. And I'll never forget Seve. He said, Chip, come on. He's hitting me on the shoulder. Come on, Chip, come on. You birdie this last hole, you're gonna win this tournament. You're gonna be the U.S. Open champ. So anyways, I hit a driver 4-iron at Shinnecock. I hit it up there about 3 feet above the hole. And it was the kind of putt where if I make it, I know it's gonna put pressure on Raymond and Payne Stewart or whoever was right there. I knew first in generally could do well because the finish goals were really tough. So as I got over that putt, I looked at that putt and I thought, wow, if I hit it too close to the middle of the hole, it's going to break out to the right. If I hit it too close to the left edge, it's going to break that way. So I said, well, and it's windy. In the wind, I could barely touch this putt. So I hit it. I felt like a really good putt. I saw it going in the left side, and it curved. The wind got it curved out. I had just a tough putt coming back. But I hit the next one straight, and it curved in and caught the right side. So that gave me some consolation, but I was really disappointed because I felt like I didn't want to really give up the opportunity to win the U.S. Open. So anyways, 20 years later, I guess it was like even around within the last 5 or 6 years, my mother called and she says, L.B. Floyd is not doing well, Chip, you need to come home. And I think his days are numbered. You need to come home and see him. So as I drove up to his house, he's being wheeled out, and he looks at me in a wheelchair and he says, Chip, the greatest day of my life was when you and Raymond finished 1-2 in the U.S. Open. So it kind of gave me some solace to think that, wow, the greatest day of his life was when Raymond beat me and we finished 1-2 in the U.S. Open. So it gave me a sense of, first off, I knew that Raymond was good to me over all these years. He always invited me to his parties. He'd invite my brother and I. And that was a big thing for a young kid on the tour coming up in the mid-'80s because Raymond was at the top of the world. He had CBS, all the CBS crew, all the officials, everybody in golf would come to his party. And I would be like one of the youngest guys there. So that was always nice for Raymond to treat me that way. So I had that real good experience with him. And then also, I had the real good fortune in when I played the first time with Jack Nicklaus. We were playing in Troon in Scotland. It's a real tough golf course. And on the second hole, it's on Saturday, I hit my ball in the bunker, and I bladed it over the green. I was still a little nervous playing with Jack for the first time. He was my boyhood idol, And so when I got there, I was nervous. I took a practice swing there and went around the green and I knocked it up. And by the time we got finished, 1,000 people had called in and said, Chip, you grounded your club in the sand. And that was a swing around bunker. It was the same bunker. And I couldn't remember. And so I looked at Mr. Nicklaus. I said, Mr. Nicklaus, did I do that? And he said, you did. But the good thing, he never forgot me. I missed it. We had a 3-round cut, a Saturday cut. I got a 2-stroke penalty. I missed it by 2 shots. And I just said, I took the medicine. But what was interesting, he never forgot me. He was always inviting me down to this tournament at Lost Tree where they raised a lot of money. I mean, even recently invited me to the Jake for his grandson that drowned. But, the experience, I played with him quite a few times after that, and we became quite comfortable in our conversation with our wives and what have you. And that, has meant more to me than probably having won a tournament. I remember one event at the Memorial Tournament in 1984. I was leading the tournament, and on the 14th hole, that real short, it's like I was thinking, if I hit 2-iron, flag was back right, real short green, real tight, it's only 10 feet across. And I said, if I hit 2 iron, I'm going to have to put 7 iron into that flag. I said, I don't think I can make birdie with 7 iron into that flag. So I said, I'm going to cut a 3-wood out there across the fairway, just leave it down where I get maybe a 9 iron. Well, I cut it across the fairway all right, and I got it out of bounds. And it was terrible. I thought, oh my gosh. Because I felt like I was pretty good at not choking. But sometimes choking is being too careful. And that was kind of my style. And wanting too much. So, anyways, I had dinner with Jackie Nicholas just the other day. He remembered. And I said, do you remember what your dad did on the 17th hole or the 71st hole? He hit it out of bounds, and I'll never forget it. It was sitting up on the man's porch, just sitting there. And I said, how many times did your dad ever hit it out of bounds that late in the tournament? I said he probably never ever did that before or after that. He made a birdie on his second ball, made a bogey, and he ends up winning the tournament. He beat Andy Dean and I that day. But I mean, it's just nice to have good friendships. And I think that, for me, it gives me a sense of, I did the right thing. I always felt like I worked at the game in the right fashion with the right principles to have at least the friendship of my peers and to feel like that I did it the right way. So when you look at, for instance, let me go into the next section of my speech here, because I remember this fellow, one of my dad's real good friends, and the last time I saw him, he was a gynecologist like this fellow right here. But he was a good-looking Italian guy with a goatee, and he had a beautiful French wife, and he had 6 children. And I remember he came over. My dad was his best friend. They were in their 40s. And he looks at me, and he said, "Where's your dad?" I said, "He's out." He said, "Chip, remember this. Aristotle said happiness is working for him." Well, within a week, this guy was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. He went and he had some problems with his heart. He was feeling bad. He went and got a myelogram, and he went and played 2 sets of tennis. Well, the next thing you know, he had a heart attack, and he basically was a vegetable for the rest of his life. His children took care of him, his wife. It was a tough thing to see. But I'll never forget him saying that happiness is working for him, because probably the best days of his life were when he was coming up, And so it helps you to have perspective on life, to feel like, gosh, life is really short. And now I'm at the stage in my life where life is really getting short. I'm 55 years old. I'm probably at the downstroke of my career. I might have 10 more years if I'm lucky, right? But as far as my golf career. But, I can tell you this, that there are a lot of guys out there that can roll out of bed and beat you. I don't care if it's Craig Stadler, Jack Nicklaus, a lot of people, they can absolutely just roll out of bed and beat you like the redheaded kid at the family reunion, you know what I mean? They can really go at you and make you feel terrible, right? But it's almost a blessing and a curse for them, because now, as we get older, they haven't developed the discipline to exercise. They haven't developed the faith to know that, wow, things can go wrong, and that you have to have resiliency in your character to pick yourself up, to not be feeling bad when you bogey the last hole and lose a tournament. So for me, I feel like I had to develop my faith in myself, but mainly you become tied to the yoke of Christ, because you know that sometimes it gets so difficult for you that He can carry it and you're yoked to Him, so you don't have to worry, So I growing up and learning my verses and what have you, I'd always repeat verses, like trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding in all your ways. Acknowledge Him and He will direct your paths. Well, that's very comforting to me, because in golf there's so much uncertainty and so many challenges that Mother Nature, you can't beat Mother Nature. Mother Nature, all of a sudden your ball catches a wind gust and, you make a double bogey, and it might cost you a lot of money. I remember standing there at Bay Hill. I go from making 30,000 to 5,000 because I hit my first ball, caught the wind, and boom, it hit the water. I don't know if you played Bay Hill, but I remember there with Jay Haas thinking, wow, Jay, I guess it's nothing but money. But I mean, I made a 7 on that last hole. Third place, we made 30,000. I went down to about, who knows where I finished. I made about $4,000. You could throw it away in a matter of moments. So you had to develop discipline and you had to develop the character to pick yourself up, to forget the last hole, forget the last stroke, forget the last day, and move into the next day with all that you had, with the best that you had. And sometimes that was really difficult. And I know, like Curtis Strange, I would always admire Curtis because I'd say, Curtis, you got a fiery temper, man. I said, but the worst thing for me is when I quit. It's hard to get up the next day. And I said, I never was the kind of guy that could break my putter out of anger and finish with a 1-iron and win the tournament like he did in Houston, like he did probably a couple of times. It was just, he had that personality that was fiery. He could make it happen for himself. And so, anyways, I became friends with Curtis just because of that comment. He probably never had anybody mention that to him. But there was a lot of truth in that. Because, when you get knocked down and you quit, it's the worst thing in the world. And I feel like, with my faith, I always felt like it never was the end of the world. I never felt like that. I mean, even when they criticized me for laying up at Augusta, I was shocked. They called me a coward, and they were calling me all these bad names, and I'm thinking, wow, I didn't think it was that bad. I was absolutely shocked. They said I was a pure coward. I'm thinking, where do they? It was the first time I'd ever been around Avian Corner with a chance to win. I played a low cut, like Hale Irvin. I think he played there 40 times. He finished top 15 maybe once. I think he finished top 10 once. You can't play Augusta National with a low cut unless you're like Craig Statler hitting the ball 300 yards with a high cut. Or Jack Nicklaus with a high cut. Even Nicklaus said he always played a hook there. But I learned to play an open-faced draw to try to win that tournament. Because I played there 10 years and I never had a chance. It's like, wow, how do these guys get the 9-iron to the 15th hole? I'm hitting 3-wood. How does it happen? But they're hitting that road hook. And it's amazing you get 50, 60 extra yards. So anyways, I go through that, and I almost win. But that was the time they called me coward. I'm thinking, man, these people don't know golf. Or I must be crazy. But it hurts you, though, when people call you a coward. Because I never saw myself being a coward anyway, because I felt like I had enough sense to be there and at least put my best foot forward. I never felt like I lost a tournament. I felt like I always got beaten. The guys were so good. I mean, if you play darts with Fred Couples, that guy will beat you. He absolutely doesn't do anything outside of exercise or anything, but he's just a naturally gifted athlete. And Nicklaus a lot the same way. The guys that come out of those cold climates, they're just gifted. It's like a guy going to Harvard. He's got the DNA in his system. And you better come with your A game. If you're a Georgia boy like me or a Florida boy like this man right, Mr. Thompson here. But, it's kind of interesting because Ted Turner said that success and failure were very similar. Because he had experienced both. And I think it broadens you when you actually have both experiences. I mean, like, in 1998, I almost set the record for the most cuts missed. Doug Ford, who won the Masters and had a great career, was the guy that set the record. He had like 56 missed cuts. I was up at 48 at the time. So I didn't know it until the press started hounding me about it. Chip, you're going to break the record. I'm thinking, what kind of record? So I mean, that's really nasty. It's terrible. It's like, oh man, I didn't know that. So that put a lot of pressure on me because I didn't want to be known for that. But the reality is, the only way that I was there is because I kept my exercises up. I kept the discipline that had made me get up and practice, that had helped me, practice my 3-footers and practice my game and come up with a game plan each time, even though it was failing on how to go into the next tournament. to get ahead and maybe win the tournament. So strategizing, making it happen, and going to my teachers and trying to figure out a way to make it all come together. That's really challenging, especially when it's costing you like $5,000 a week. You do that for a year and a half just to get the first tee, and you're out of the tournament by the first 9 holes. You shoot 39 or 40, missing 3 or 4 fairways. You can't make another 9 holes with a 40 in it, I promise you, and finish top 10. It's impossible. It doesn't happen. So I never was embarrassed about my failure or my success, because I felt like it's kind of like Rudyard Kipling said, there are 2 imposters, you treat them the same. And I think that's what Ted Turner was saying, the discipline that helps you become successful a lot of times will help you get through failure as well. And, I remember that Larry Ellison saying he had all the benefits of poverty. This guy that started Oracle and what have you. And poverty will definitely push you. And it'll make you stand in attention when it's your family on the line and when you're having to make those putts. And you can get to the point where you're almost having fights with guys. You see it, even at my age, guys getting upset with each other. It's like, oh man, this is a nasty thing at times when people can get really mad and upset. But I think if they had a little bit stronger faith, it would level itself out. They could take the ups and the downs, and they would probably be a lot happier, a lot more successful in their marriages, because I think you learn humility from your failure. You learn that it's not all about what you're up to and all about your success. It really has more to do with your relationships with people and your experience with people. That's what I've found. And I think that's because of, like I tell my children, I said, you know what? Proverbs says that the just man will have many problems, but he will be delivered from all of them. And the unjust is not true. They'll have 7 times more problems, and they will not be delivered from them. But I think there's a lot of truth in that, in respect that you really have to be honest, and you have to have your integrity with you to know that things will work out for the good of those who love the good Lord. And so I'm fortunate to have had the background of my parents teaching me that. Because I think your father has to teach you how to treat women. He teaches you how to do the right thing. So I feel fortunate. So having gone through my life, and my parents, they had 36 grandchildren, and they're all healthy. And they've got great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren just starting now. It's quite amazing to see how the biblical truths, they're long-lasting, and they bring a lot of happiness to people. And you can see it over generations. I can see it from my great-grandmother to my grandmother to my mother, and how that plays itself out. And so it's not something to toy with, and it's not something that falls off the trees. It doesn't just fall out of the trees, It's something that people make conscious efforts in their lives to make the right decision. And it's as simple as making the right decision today. And I believe that's where it starts. And that's why I feel privileged to be here to at least talk to you about my life, because first off, people don't ask me about my spiritual life very often. And it really is a privilege to be able to tell you things like how I see my life and my relationship with others and how important it is, but how it also affects generations of my family. Because really, people aren't going to remember what I accomplished on the golf course at all. They clearly will remember if I was a good husband, if I was good to my children, if I was good to my ex-wife, all the things that come up that really make us struggle and make us better people. So I don't know how much time we have, Mike. We probably have plenty of time. And I know we want to get to some Q&A. But I will say this, that in my toughest times, I think it comes down to the scriptures that have really helped me. Trust in the Lord. And one of the verses that I really love is rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Because, when you rejoice in the Lord, He said He gives you a peace which passes all understanding. And it's difficult to be joyous in our lives, but I always know that you can see a person by who they are, by their cheerful countenance and the way they carry themselves, if they're easy to smile, and if they're enjoying the people they're with. I think that really, that's what real life is all about. That's what I learned through my journey. So do we have any questions? Mike, you must have a question.
For Chip, that was excellent. We do have time for questions. Gentlemen, just wanted to ask if you would keep your questions short, to the point, and also make sure they're questions as opposed to statements or something you may want to say to Chip. He will be here afterwards if you have a statement or two you want to share with him, but because we have limited time, please be sure to ask questions and keep them short and to the point. That way we can handle as many questions as possible. And we have a couple of board members with microphones, Chip, that'll take the questions, and then we'll have our raffle.
We're going to raffle these books. The Focus for Golf. This was a time in my life when I was really down and out, and I was trying to teach myself how to be better. So I worked with my friend Dr. Glad, who's a really smart guy, and I think you'll enjoy the book because, you know, when you're trying to improve your life, you want to become what you teach. So that's where that came from. But what was the first question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, this may be a selfish question because I'm in master's school. Who do they think will be the top 4 players in this year's Masters?
The top 4 players. Well, I'll tell you what, that McIlroy, with that draw that he plays, I think he'd be hard to beat. And, the guy that I like is that Charles Schwartzel. That guy has really a beautiful golf swing, and I think he likes to hit a draw. So those two guys, it'd be nice to see those boys down there. But then also, you know, the masters of all courses, they reward length more than neighbors. In my opinion, I always felt like the U.S. Open was a better major because in my day, if you could hit the ball 255 yards down the middle of the fairway, you could win the U.S. Open. And so Corey Pavin could do that at 140 pounds. You know, sopping wet. I don't think he ever weighed more than 150 pounds. And so I always felt like, you know, that was the best tournament. But now, I mean, when you play the U.S. Open, Corey Pavin and Beth Page couldn't get it to the fairways in the last 9 holes. So anyways, they reward length.
2 more picks.
So you gotta pick. I would go with the length to put the odds in your favor. And you know, if you look at like a Bubba Watson who plays the big slice, it's a pretty controlled shot. It's probably easier to slice it than it is to hook it and to keep it in the park, right? You start hitting hooks, a lot of times you can't find the ball. So I would go with a guy like Bubba Watson because he is so long. And then you got to go with a guy like Steve Stricker. You know, he needs to win a major. It's his time.
Phil or Tiger much longer. Steve's not as long as they are, am I right?
They've won before, though.
Boy,
So I think that it might not be their year. But I will tell you this, that I'm happy to see Tiger Woods come back. Because I remember, I played with, in the last so many years, I played with Michael J. Fox. And I asked Michael, I said, Michael, people ask me all the time, they're upset with Tiger and all that. And I said, but for me, I can't judge it because I'm not at 30 years old worth $500 million, where every girl in the world wants to take you home with her. And everybody wants to meet you. I said, I don't know what that's like. And he said, Chip, I was about a decimal point and 0 behind that. He said, and I was an alcoholic and a complete wreck. My wife saved me. So that's a tough thing to overcome. So you got to pull for a guy like that. I hope he's like Bill Clinton, growing up at the right time, right? Another question. Yes, sir.
Chip, you mentioned about golfers in the Catholic faith. Have you ever thought about being sharp in apologetics and proving the Catholic faith from the Bible and history And my thought is that if you really know the faith, you can never leave it. You know? Have you ever tried to evangelize those other golfers?
Have I talked to them and asked them about that?
And come back to the faith. Ask them why they left. And invite them back again.
Well, like Jay Haas asked me, he said, Chip, you know, my family, we're looking to go into the Episcopal faith. You know, with all the problems with the priesthood and all that. And I said, well, Jay, didn't the Episcopal Church just have bishops that were, you know, women and lesbians and all that? I said, what the heck's the difference? You know, I said, so all churches have trouble. We're human. We have problems. I said, but to take your whole family out, I said, you know, in South Carolina, I don't know how strong the church is, but I try to do my best to encourage people. Like the chaplain just last term, he said, Chip, would you be willing to come with me to a group of men and talk about your faith? I said, I'd love to do that. But normally it's the born again, you know, Bernhard Langer and the guys that are, and I have fellowship with that group, but I go as a Catholic, and I just tell them, you know, I'm just working on what Padre Pio says, you know, you gotta pray, hope, and don't worry, right? So I try to express my faith in the way that I know how, and but that's about as far as it goes. I mean, Father Barron, when I see him, he wants to come out there and have a priest, but he's all over the place. It's hard to get a priest that can come out week to week and what have you. So that's a challenge. Yes, sir.
That would be my question. If you're on tour like this, and your weekends are all taken up, how do you get to church?
Well, it's on the tour now for me. It's quite easy because, you know, my pro-am times are generally morning or afternoon. I can go on the days. I can go on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then in the morning I can go, or sometimes in the evening. And like this community here, there's so many different masses you can find them. But clearly on Sunday, like I told the priest last week, my son came out, my wife came out, and I felt terrible about, you know, we didn't get to church. But the mass wasn't convenient, and I had to play at a certain time. It was too hard. And so, you know, unfortunately today, that's kind of the way it works with the golfers. We always work on Sunday. And so you have to make an effort to go Saturday evening. And then you can usually make a Saturday evening unless you're winning tournament or something. So anyway, I think it's, like for me, growing up in the Catholic faith with the nuns and all, I mean, I felt by this church I was going to hell. I was scared to death, right? So I didn't want my sons to feel scared like that, because some of my brothers and sisters, when they got away from it, they were ready to get away from it, all the fear and the Catholic guilt one had, you know? So I think it's better to be a little more democratic and to have them have a say in their religion and in their faith, but kind of guide them democratically so that they feel like it's their decision. I'm hoping that works for my sons. But I'm just praying, you know, because I have two sons that would make great priests. And I'm thinking, man, it's God's call, though. Because I said, man, you know, because even Father Barron's called them, and, hey, you guys make good priests. You know, they're still 16 and 18. They don't know what life's all about, you know. I mean, my son in college right now loves Ron Paul. And I said, John, go campaign for him. I said, you need a guy like Ron Paul in there to help this country with the finances. We're going to go in the worst financial situation we've been in a long time. So, next question, before I get sidetracked on that. Yes, sir.
I know you're a great golfer, but I'll tell you, I've always loved Freddie Couples, and I've watched him play in California. So I'm wondering if you can tell us if you played with Freddie Couples and your experience at Pebble Beach.
I saw Freddie Couples in Houston, Texas. Hit a 600-yard par 5 with a driver, 3-wood. Just into at least 25-mile-an-hour wind. I hit driver, 3-wood, and I think I hit like it might even have been a 3-iron. it's been a while, but I cannot believe how far he hits it. And so Freddie, in my practice, I'm real disciplined, and I have a routine that I go through. And I like my ball flight looking very similar, and I like the flight look the same. So a lot of times, for some reason, I'm right behind Freddie, and he just turns around and starts watching. And he'll say, Chip, man, why don't you win more? You got just a shot. And he starts talking. And, one of the times he's hit one or two shots. Ah, Chip, I got to go, man. See you. His back's killing him. Arching his back, what have you. But Freddie is, in my opinion, probably the most naturally gifted player. And, it's really difficult for these guys because I think it comes so easy, and they think that they can just throw money at their problems and they'll dissolve. But I think it accumulates and creates more problems. And so in like the fourth marriage now, it's like, it's a tough thing to watch. Because golfers have a high divorce rate to start with. But, I would like to see Freddie at least come to a sense that, the money and the fame is not going to solve all those issues forever. It's like John Daly. John Daly's a really gifted player. When I played the tournament, we played the team championship out in Thousand Oaks, which is about an hour north of Los Angeles. And John said, let's go play, let's go watch the match in Las Vegas, the big fight. John was just so talented. And we'd get there Sunday, he lost, 80 some odd thousand on gambling, on football. And he wasn't going to play that day, he was distraught. So they have habits that, like I said, John, did you really lose 50 million? He said, Jim, I think it's more around 60 million. But I know for a fact that he gave $180,000 to the teller at the bank because his sponsor, I was like the backup for John. And his sponsor told me that the bank teller, didn't know, she couldn't accept that check. But I mean, it's like, when you make $50 million like Fred Couples, you think the world is all about, you throw money at it and solve it. It does solve a lot of problems. But I think, personally, you'd like to see where he's happy, content, and at peace. Because a lot of times on our tour, it's difficult to get him to, he wants to get out of there as quick as possible. I don't know if he's having that much fun. Whereas most of the guys really enjoy what they're doing. They like the people that come out that want to praise them and see them and talk to them and talk about old times. Like, we won the tournament at Fiddlesticks, my buddy here was telling me about it. So it's like, it's just, most people are like that. So I don't know. I don't know him anymore, just an acquaintance like that, but I always admire his great athletic ability because I've never seen anything so naturally good. Like when we played the Ryder Cup in 1989, that's when Paige Stewart, everybody was cutting the corner, and it was a long carry over the left. And the wind would feel like it was helping you, but it would quarterback into you. And so half our team, Calvin, Stewart, half the guys trying to knock it over the corner went right in the street. And for me, I just hit it straight out to the right, just like the rest of the European players. They hit it straight out to the right. And Freddie hit it down there. I'm hitting 2-iron. He hit like 9-iron. I mean, that's a different game. He plays a whole different game. So, he missed that green at that time and was pretty much inconsolable. His wife couldn't console him. Raymond Floyd was having a hard time consoling because I don't think in golf, understanding what you do is like the booby prize. It doesn't get you anything. If you can see the ball and you can imagine that ball going to that target and hit it, that's all Freddie does. He said he had one lesson where he takes the left thumb and moves to the left shoulder as quick as he can. Pretty nice to have that much ability. But like I said, I think it's hard because if he'd have had some failings early on, it might have made him a lot tougher. And I think that now he is probably a lot tougher with all the challenges he's been up against. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Just a comment, really, that mentioned a couple of times how people have reacted to possibly the way you're swinging the ball, the way you play the game. You know, all of us, I mean, we never know who's watching us at any given time and what we're doing that is making people react one way or another. Have you ever had a situation where you found out after the fact that because of something that you've done that has exemplified your faith, that it has had an impact on someone else on the tour that you didn't even realize that you did?
Well, I can tell you this. In 1990, I'm at the Tour Championship banquet with Eric Hilton. I'm sitting at Eric Hilton's wife, myself, my wife, and I think some of the workers of the tour. And anyways, Eric Hilton's talking about how they were going to put up $1 million for the first person that shot 59. My wife kicks me under the table. She said, "You hadn't kicked me before, Sim." She said, "Tim, you're going to get that." And Eric heard it, and I was kind of embarrassed. I said, "Eric, I know one thing. You put up $1 million, and somebody will get it." And so, you know, the night before, I'm on the putting green in Las Vegas, and John Cook and his caddy and Dick Mast is there with his caddy, and they're talking about how this golf course you can shoot 59 on. And my wife and I had actually started the Sacred Heart Foundation, and I didn't know how we were going to fund it really, other than if I really played well. And so when I had a chance to make that putt for 59, which was my goal, because I didn't want to think about it before I had an actual chance to do it. Why worry yourself over it, right? But as I made the turn, and Marshall says, "Wow, Chip, 29, keep it up, and you'll shoot the 59. The hardest birdie I could make was on the 10th hole. Thinking about it, you get nervous, right? Even on the last hole, I said, "I've got to get this ball in the hole. I need to make this thing. I can't wait around for it." But the greens are getting bumpy. I don't know if I can make another putt. But anyways, I think that with that in mind, I knew that I could make that putt. I was thinking about, you know, the spike marks and how I could 1-2 right off, catch the right side of the hole. If I stayed real steady, I could make that and give it a chance. But I know one thing. If it would have been for my own selfish gain, for my own personal gratification, I know I couldn't have made that putt. It's not my nature. But I knew my wife and I were going to fund that foundation with that money. And I was going to give it the best chance it had. And so I calmed myself on the side of the green and knocked that putt in. And that putt actually has allowed 40 people to get the Chip Beck scholarships at the Western Golf Association with the PGA Tour and the PGA of America. I would say that's the best thing that's happened to me in golf, and I think that's faith related. And I think people know that about me because they know my story that way. So maybe that answers your question. Any more questions?
Chip, quick question. You mentioned earlier you hit a ball and all of a sudden the wind comes up and it pushes it left or right. And I was at the Ace Challenge this year. I saw you play a little bit. And it's the windiest conditions I've ever seen. You played really well. How do you play well in conditions like that? And how unusual was the wind this year at the Ace Challenge?
Well, in Florida, you always get wind. And the thing that's so great about wind is that it's so capricious and it affects everybody at one time or another. So if you're really playing well, it'll make your score really shine. You're 72, I remember playing in Hawaii, and it was kind of a funny thing. The guy told me, we're going out to Newport Beach Country Club in a week, and the former owner of Newport Beach Country Club, he had a boat. I told him I lost my sponsor. I couldn't play his event unless I had a place to stay. He put me up on his boat. I ended up playing well enough to buy my ticket to Hawaii, And the Sunday round, I shot 72 on a real windy day. I actually bladed a bunker shot on like the third hole in par 3, hit the flag and went right in the hole. And that kind of got me on my way. But the wind, you know, when you go from 25th place, shoot even par, and you go to 3rd place in the tournament, that is what wind can do for you. So I always love wind when you're playing well because, wow, great things happen with these pars look really good. So don't be discouraged with wind. What you can do in the windy conditions is not change your swing, just move closer to the ball, and that will allow you to hit more directly onto the ball in a straight line delivery with your hands more forward, and that'll keep the ball down, and you don't have to change your swing. That's a good rule of thumb when you're playing in the wind. And just be like the dove in the storm. Everything's going crazy, but you're just calm. Don't let it throw you emotionally, and don't let it throw your swing to where you're changing your swing line. Like Fred Funk, to me, is one of the best drivers because he has one speed, and he uses it under all conditions. Hits the ball pretty much the same distance, the same swing, but he's very, very consistent and very straight. So the wind doesn't bother him, and I think that it takes that mentality to be at peace with the wind and let it be your friend. Don't fight Mother Nature; she'll beat you every time. But I'd like to tell you one last thing because my wife will get mad at me if I don't. I was trying to teach her to play golf. Now that's a hard task. She said, "Chip, this lady wants me to play golf in the member guest." And I said, "Oh no." She hadn't played 18 holes. So I was trying to show her the grip. She said, "Chip, that's way too complicated. How can I remember that? I need something that changes colors when my hand's in the right place, kind of like the moon ring." So she figured she'd go on the internet and find it. There was nothing there. So, needless to say, she ends up inventing a product that is an adhesive back strip that changes colors when your hand's in the right place. She looked up the moon ring, and it's a company in Chicago. And for I guess that was in the 60s, early 60s. They have taken that company to a $24 million a year company, and they do the Coors beer cans with cold temperature changes. This is with thermo changes. So, I mean, it's like the color of a rainbow when your finger's on there and you change, like in the sun, whatever, you change its color. But it also has a three-dimensional line there that'll tell you where to place your hand. So, for instance, in my day, they always told us, well, put your thumb at 12 o'clock and you'll hit fades. But we know these are the guys that hit hooks. And the guys that play that way, they're great putters, or they wouldn't get to the top of the league. Our number one putter last year was Chip Beck. He aims 25 yards right, he rolls those hands, and it's a big sweep hook. Corey Payton the same way. They block it, they cut it into play. But they hit it short, they hit it. Chip Beck hits it hard, he doesn't hit it short, but he hits it all over. When he's on, he's good. But he's a great putter. But anyways, she ended up winning the tournament. She went 4-4-4 on the 3 last holes with strokes and won by stroke. I thought, man, it was the first time she played with a caddy, the first time she walked 18 holes. I thought, man, Karen, that's pretty amazing. That was my wife. So anyways, she sells these for $20 a piece, and so Mike's gonna offer these up to you if somebody wants to buy it. But all you do is you put it on like a Band-Aid. You take the middle strip out, line it up right down your shaft at 12 o'clock, take the right side off, wrap it, and then the left side wrap it, and then it'll put your hand in the classic card style, which if there are 24 different combination of shots, the high hook, the high cut, you can get all of them. Whereas if you have your improper grip, you can't get the quarter of it. So anyways, that's my spiel.
Take out your tags. We're going to raffle off five of the books. If you'll pick one here, Chip. We'll just read off the last three numbers is all you need. Who has 106? 106. 106. If somebody could help me here,